Good evening, and welcome to this calming journey into the story of cities, why they rise, why they thrive, and how geography shapes the places we call home. Tonight, we'll drift through 35 essential facts about urban geography, discovering how rivers, trade, climate, and human choices create the cities that light up our maps. If you enjoy learning in this relaxing way, you're warmly invited to subscribe, but only if it feels right for you. It also means a lot if you comment where you are listening from, your country, your city, and the time of day. This helps us see the global community connected by curiosity and rest. Now, let us ease into our first fact. Cities often emerge beside rivers. It is a pattern that repeats itself across history. Think of Cairo on the Nile, London on the Thames, or Shanghai on the Yangtze. Rivers not only supply water for daily use, but they also create natural highways for travel, trade, and cultural exchange. Before railways and highways, a boat was the fastest way to move goods, making rivers the arteries of early economies. This simple fact that water invites settlements explains why some of the world's oldest cities are still alive and thriving today. But rivers alone are not the story. Coastlines also draw people in. The sea carries spices, silk, grain, and ideas across continents. A port city can become a stage for world history, where merchants, travelers, and leaders cross paths. In this way, geography is destiny. A harbor can launch a city into global prominence. Another reason cities grow where they do is access to fertile land. Take the Great Crescent of Mesopotamia, or the plains of northern India around the Ganges. Where soil is rich and water is nearby, agriculture flourishes. With agriculture comes surplus food, and with surplus food comes specialization. Farmers feed artisans, artisans create goods, merchants trade them, and leaders govern. Fertile fields can quite literally plant the seeds of civilization. We also see cities forming at crossroads, places where trade routes meet. Samarkand in Uzbekistan, once a jewel of the Silk Road, thrived because caravans carrying silks, spices, and gems converged there. Modern examples echo the same logic. Cities like Dubai or Istanbul rise at the meeting point of continents, channeling commerce and culture between regions. Climate plays its part, too. Comfortable climates, with not too hot summers and not too cold winters, tend to invite settlement. Mediterranean cities like Barcelona, Athens, and Rome benefit from such temperate zones. Conversely, harsh climates require special adaptations. Cities in deserts, such as Phoenix or Riyadh, rely on modern infrastructure, pipelines, air conditioning, and technology to sustain growth in challenging environments. Natural resources also pull cities into being. Coal and iron made Manchester and Pittsburgh industrial giants. Oil wealth transformed once small desert towns into modern metropolises. Like Dubai, gold rushes spurred the rapid growth of San Francisco. In each case, the promise of wealth in the ground brought people together, and where people gather, cities grow. Let's also remember that geography is not only physical but political. Capitals are sometimes built not on the richest soil or beside the deepest harbor, but where leaders decide. In Brazil, Canberra, in Australia, and Washington. D.C. in the United States, were chosen and planned as seats of government. These designed capitals show how human choice can override natural geography, reshaping landscapes to serve national unity or balance of power. Mountains, while obstacles, also influence city growth. Consider Mexico City, lying in a high valley, or La Paz, nestled within the Andes. These locations are not easy. Yet their elevation provided cooler climates in the tropics, defensible positions, and sometimes fertile volcanic soils. Mountains may challenge, but they also protect and provide. Another pattern is that many cities grow at confluences where rivers meet. Khartoum in Sudan lies where the Blue Nile and White Nile merge. Pittsburgh sits at the confluence of the Allegheny and Monongahela, forming the Ohio River. These spots offer multiple routes for trade and communication, multiplying a city's reach. Over time, technology reshapes the story, which became a hub of American commerce thanks to its rail connections. Highways, airports, and digital infrastructure now allow even previously remote places to thrive if they adapt to new forms of connectivity. Tourism is another modern driver. Cities like Venice, Paris, and Kyoto attract millions, not because of raw resources, but because of culture, beauty, and heritage. The economy of these places depends on travelers, who bring wealth to sustain restaurants, hotels, museums, and entire local industries. In this way, culture itself becomes geography, attraction shaping population flows. Education also anchors growth. University cities like Oxford, Cambridge, or Boston thrive on intellectual economies. Students, researchers, and industries connected to learning generate innovation, which, in turn, attracts more people. The geography of ideas is just as powerful as rivers or roads. And finally, let's not overlook resilience. Some cities rise where disasters are common, like Tokyo with earthquakes, New Orleans with hurricanes, or Naples with volcanic risk. Yet people rebuild again and again, valuing the economic, cultural, or geographic benefits so highly that they accept the dangers. This tension between opportunity and risk is central to the story of urban geography. These first reflections give us a foundation: rivers, coasts, fertile soils, crossroads, resources, climates, capitals, and confluences, all guiding where cities grow. Each element weaves together to form the fabric of civilization. In the next part, we will travel deeper into the heartbeat of urban life, exploring how cities sustain themselves and how their geography influences culture, trade, and identity. As we settle into the rhythm of this journey, let us return to the water. 4 rivers and coasts have long been the lifeblood of urban geography. Imagine the city of Paris. The Seine River winds gently through its heart, shaping neighborhoods, trade routes, and even the romantic image the world now holds of the French capital. The bridges across the Seine are not just stone and steel. They are symbols of how a river connects and unifies a city, rather than dividing it. London tells a similar story. The Thames allowed Roman settlers to establish Londinium nearly 2,000 years ago. Its tidal nature gave ships access deep inland, creating a port city that would later become the center of one of the largest empires in history. Even today, London's role as a hub of global finance is inseparable from its maritime beginnings. In Asia, the Yangtze River has nurtured Shanghai's growth. As the longest river in China and one of the most important in the world, it provides fertile plains, irrigation, and transport. Shanghai's position near the river's mouth means it can act both as a river port and as a seaport, making it a perfect node for international commerce. If we shift to the Americas, we find New Orleans, born from its proximity to the Mississippi River and the Gulf of Mexico. The city's fortunes have risen and fallen with the flow of trade, from cotton and sugar in the 19th century to oil and grain in the 20th. Its story is one of resilience, as geography brings both opportunity and vulnerability, especially in the face of hurricanes. Ports, too, carry a special significance in the story of cities. Think of Singapore, once a modest fishing village, now a global powerhouse. Its geography at the narrow Strait of Malacca placed it at the crossroads of trade between the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Today, Singapore is one of the busiest ports in the world. Its cranes and container ships, a reminder of how the movement of goods sustains modern economies. Dubai provides another striking example. Once a small trading settlement on the Arabian Gulf, it harnessed its strategic location and invested in port facilities. From the early days of pearl diving to today's luxury economy of skyscrapers, airlines, and financial districts, Dubai demonstrates how a port can be transformed into a cosmopolitan city of influence. In Northern Europe, Amsterdam reveals the power of canals and maritime trade. Dutch engineers not only reclaimed land from the sea, but also built a city whose wealth flowed from global shipping routes. The Dutch East India Company, operating from Amsterdam, made it one of the richest and most connected cities of the 17th century. Its canals remain a symbol of ingenuity, blending water management with urban beauty. Ports are more than economic engines. They are a cultural crossroads. Cities like Istanbul, at the meeting of the Bosporus Strait, illustrate this perfectly. Here, East meets West, and Europe meets Asia. Goods, languages, religions, and ideas have flowed through this city for centuries, creating one of the richest cultural tapestries in the world. When we think about these rivers and ports, it becomes clear that cities are not just dots on a map. They are nodes in vast networks of water and trade. Their geography creates patterns of movement, wealth, and exchange. And the echoes of these beginnings still shape their modern identities, even in an age of airplanes and digital trade. But water is not always kind. Coastal cities like Miami, Jakarta, and Bangkok face challenges from rising sea levels and flooding. Geography gives and takes away as climate change reshapes coastlines. The future of many cities depends on human innovations, walls, green infrastructure, and perhaps even the relocation of populations. Yet, humanity has always adapted. Venice, for instance, was born from the need to escape invasions on the mainland. Its people built their city on wooden piles driven into the lagoon's mud, creating a city that seems to float on water. Though tides and flooding threaten it today, Venice stands as a symbol of resilience where geography and ingenuity meet. When we pull back and view the world at night, we see lights clustering along rivers and coasts. From the Nile Delta to the Pearl River in China, from the Hudson to the Thames, the glow of human settlement follows the same patterns that ancient settlers first discovered. Water is life, and cities still follow its course. In the next part, we will move from water to land and explore how mountains, plains, and resources shape the rise of cities in every corner of the world. When we step away from the rivers and coasts and turn our eyes inland, the story of cities shifts toward mountains, plains, and the natural resources hidden beneath the earth. Geography on land can be just as decisive as water in determining where humans choose to build their great centers of population. Let us begin with mountains. Cities do not always thrive on mountaintops, but they often flourish in the valleys and basins carved between them. Mexico City is an extraordinary example. Nestled high in the Valley of Mexico at more than 2,200 meters above sea level, it was first the site of Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital. The mountains around the valley provided protection, while nearby lakes offered water and fertile soil. Yet, the altitude also brought challenges: thin air, seasonal frosts, and limited agricultural space. Despite these challenges, Mexico City has grown into one of the largest urban centers on Earth, home to more than 20 million people. Its story reminds us that human determination often outweighs natural difficulty. Another striking example is Kathmandu in Nepal. Located in a valley surrounded by the towering Himalayas, this city has long been a hub for trade routes crossing between India and Tibet, while the surrounding mountains make transportation challenging. They also give Kathmandu cultural richness. Hindu and Buddhist influences intermingle, and the city has developed a strong tradition of craftsmanship and architecture. The very mountains that limit its expansion also shape its unique identity. Mountains can also serve as natural fortresses. Think of Machu Picchu, perched high in the Andes, or cities such as Cusco that relied on their mountainous terrain for protection against invasion. Elevation gave strategic advantage, allowing smaller populations to thrive in relative safety, while also developing cultures deeply tied to the rhythms of altitude. Yet, it is often in the broad plains where the largest cities arise. Plains provide fertile soil, space for expansion, and easier routes for building infrastructure such as roads and railways. Beijing, for instance, lies in the North China Plain, one of the most fertile and expansive flatlands in Asia. Its geography made it an ideal location for farming communities that eventually evolved into powerful dynasties, and later into one of the world's most populous capitals. Similarly, the North European plain has supported great cities like Berlin, Warsaw, and Moscow. Stretching across a broad swath of Europe, this landscape enabled trade, agriculture, and military campaigns, while the flat terrain allowed armies to march across it with relative ease. It also facilitated the spread of culture, commerce, and industry, giving rise to dense urbanization. Plains are also tied closely to agricultural surpluses. When land can feed large populations, cities rise naturally. The American Midwest provides a good example, where cities like Chicago grew from their positions in fertile farmland, combined with transport advantages like the Great Lakes and railroads. Chicago became not just a city of farming, but a hub of meatpacking, manufacturing, and finance. Geography laid the foundation, and human enterprise expanded the blueprint. Resources hidden beneath the land also play a decisive role. Consider Johannesburg in South Africa. This city owes much of its existence to the discovery of gold in the Witwatersrand. People rushed to settle there, and infrastructure quickly followed. Similarly, cities like Houston grew rapidly due to their proximity to oil fields. In these examples, the soil itself provided the spark for urban growth. But resources can also be fleeting. Once the minerals or oil reserves are exhausted, cities face new challenges of reinvention. Some adapt, building economies of technology, finance, or culture. Others decline, reminders of how dependent urban life can be on the gifts of geography. Mountains and plains also affect climate, which in turn influences city life. Los Angeles, for example, lies between mountains and the Pacific Ocean, creating a Mediterranean climate that attracts millions of residents. Yet, the mountains also trap air pollution, producing the famous LA smog. Geography creates opportunities, but demands trade-offs. Meanwhile, cities at high altitudes, such as La Paz in Bolivia, adapt to thinner air and cooler temperatures. Homes, streets, and even transportation systems must be designed with elevation in mind. In La Paz, cable cars stretch across the mountain slopes, providing not only breathtaking views, but also a practical solution for commuting in such rugged terrain. Looking more broadly, the relationship between mountains, plains, and resources reveals why civilizations cluster in certain zones of the world. Fertile valleys, like the Nile, the Indus, and the Tigris-Euphrates supported cities thousands of years ago. And their legacy continues in the modern metropolises of Cairo, Karachi, and Baghdad. Flat, fertile land, combined with water, remains the recipe for urban success. And yet, cities are not simply the product of their physical geography. Human ingenuity reshapes landscapes, digging tunnels through mountains, reclaiming land from seas, and irrigating deserts. Dubai rises in a desert. Tokyo rests in a seismically active zone. Denver stands at the foot of the Rockies. Geography provides the starting point, but humanity writes the next chapter. As we leave the mountains and plains behind, let us next turn to climate, the invisible yet powerful force that governs not only where cities can thrive, but also how their cultures and economies develop. If rivers, coasts, mountains, and plains tell us where cities may take root, climate often decides how those cities grow, thrive, or struggle. Climate is the steady rhythm of temperature, rainfall, and seasonal cycles that governs agriculture, trade, and even the daily habits of citizens. It is a silent architect, shaping urban life in subtle but profound ways. Take Cairo, for example. Positioned at the edge of the Sahara Desert, its climate is hot and dry. Rainfall is scarce, yet the Nile River provides the water that sustains the city. For thousands of years, the rhythm of the Nile's floods made agriculture possible here, feeding populations and supporting the rise of one of the world's earliest civilizations. In modern times, Cairo's climate has encouraged densely packed housing, shaded streets, and evening social life when the heat subsides. The city adjusts to its environment, demonstrating how urban culture bends around climate. Contrast this with London. Here, the climate is temperate, with steady rainfall and mild temperatures. The city never faces extremes of heat or cold, making it comfortable for continuous habitation. Its climate also allowed for early agricultural surpluses, while rainfall kept rivers and canals flowing, feeding industry during the Industrial Revolution. Today, Londoners carry umbrellas as casually as wallets, and the climate still colors the city's identity. Further east, Mumbai thrives in a monsoon climate. From June to September, the city is drenched with torrential rains, and its infrastructure bends to this seasonal rhythm. Streets flood, transport slows, and people adapt their routines. Yet this same climate also sustains agriculture in the surrounding region, and the harbor's natural shelter from storms has long made Mumbai a hub of maritime trade. Without the monsoon's water, much of western India would be barren. With it, the city thrives as a global financial and cultural center. Cold climates, too, host remarkable cities. Consider Moscow, where winters are long and severe. Snow and ice shape not only transportation, but also architecture. Buildings must be insulated against the cold, streets cleared regularly, and economies adjusted to seasonal rhythms. Yet, Moscow's climate has also provided historical advantages. Harsh winters that once halted invading armies, protecting the city from conquest. Climate, in this case, was both a challenge and a shield. Meanwhile, Singapore tells the story of tropical climates. Situated just north of the equator, it experiences hot, humid weather year-round, with rain falling almost daily. This constant warmth and moisture feed lush greenery that entwines with skyscrapers in a striking contrast of nature and modernity. But the tropical climate also brings health challenges like mosquitoes and heat stress. Singapore's urban planning includes abundant green spaces, shaded walkways, and an embrace of air conditioning, making the city both livable and iconic. Climate also intersects with economy and tourism. Consider Mediterranean cities like Barcelona or Athens, where warm, sunny summers attract millions of visitors. The climate itself becomes a resource, feeding local businesses, restaurants, and cultural events. Luxury travel thrives where weather promises comfort and beauty. On the other hand, some climates push cities to innovate. Dubai sits in one of the hottest desert regions on Earth, where summer temperatures soar above 40 degrees Celsius. To counter this, the city has invested heavily in air-conditioned infrastructure, shaded urban design, and even artificial islands to increase coastal breezes. The harsh desert climate did not deter growth. Instead, it inspired engineering feats that now attract global admiration and tourism. Climate change, however, is now altering the rules. Rising sea levels threaten coastal cities like Miami, Dhaka, and Jakarta. More intense storms batter New Orleans, Manila, and Tokyo. Droughts squeeze cities like Cape Town, where residents in 2018 came dangerously close to day zero, the day water would run out. Urban planners increasingly must look beyond past climate patterns and prepare for new, unpredictable futures. But climate is not only about temperature and rainfall, it shapes culture itself. In Scandinavia, the long, dark winters encourage cozy traditions of gathering indoors, sharing meals, and embracing warmth. The Danish concept of hike is one such cultural response. In contrast, Mediterranean climates encourage outdoor plazas and late-night socializing, where the mild air becomes a natural living room. Climate sets the stage, and human creativity fills it with meaning. From the desert sprawl of Phoenix to the snowy streets of Helsinki, from the monsoon-washed alleys of Hanoi to the sunlit boulevards of Los Angeles, every city pulses to the rhythm of its climate. This invisible but ever-present force shapes housing, infrastructure, economy, and even the psychology of urban life. As we move forward, let us now step into another dimension of geography: trade routes and transportation corridors. Beyond rivers, beyond plains, and beyond climate, it is the ability to move goods and people efficiently that often decides which settlements blossom into cities and which remain small towns. If climate is the steady rhythm of a city's life, trade routes are the beating heart. They connect settlements to resources, to wealth, and to one another. From the earliest caravan paths across deserts to the bustling airports of today, cities thrive where movement is easiest and where trade flows most freely. Think first of the Silk Road. This vast network of overland routes tied China to Europe, and along it grew cities like Samarkand and Bukhara. These urban centers blossomed not because of fertile land or gentle climates alone, but because merchants, scholars, and travelers stopped to rest, trade, and share ideas. Silk, spices, and precious stones moved through their markets, but so did art, religion, and technology. The Silk Road was as much about cultural exchange as it was about commerce, and the cities along its path reflect that layered history to this day. Now turn toward the sea. Venice, with its canals and elegant palaces, rose not on fertile plains or wide rivers, but on a lagoon. Why here? Because Venice commanded a strategic point between Europe and the eastern Mediterranean. Ships laden with spices, textiles, and luxury goods docked in its harbors, and the wealth of maritime trade filled its treasury. Venice transformed into a city of art, architecture, and finance, fueled by its control of sea trade routes. Consider also Istanbul, later Constantinople. Positioned on the Bosporus Strait, it is a city that literally sits at the crossroads of Europe and Asia. Whoever held this city held access to trade between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, making it one of the most contested and influential urban centers in history. Geography gave it power, and trade turned that power into culture, economy, and enduring influence. On the African continent, Timbuktu grew famous not for its farmland, but for its location along trans-Saharan caravan routes. Gold, salt, and ivory were exchanged here, along with manuscripts and scholarship. Its libraries became legendary, and it became a beacon of knowledge as much as commerce. Again, trade routes transformed an isolated desert settlement into a city of global renown. Modern cities also bear the stamp of trade routes. Singapore, perched at the tip of the Malay Peninsula, commands the Strait of Malacca, one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. Nearly a quarter of global trade passes through this narrow waterway. Singapore's growth from a small colonial outpost to a wealthy, modern city-state rests squarely on its location as a maritime crossroads. Today, its port is one of the busiest on Earth, and its economy thrives on shipping, finance, and global connectivity. Panama City tells a similar story. The Panama Canal carved through the isthmus in 1914, providing a shortcut between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Suddenly, this city, on a narrow strip of land, became a hub of global shipping, with goods from Asia, Europe, and the Americas passing through. The canal redefined trade, and Panama City's urban growth followed the flow of commerce. Air routes, too, have created modern cities. Dubai's explosive rise from a desert town to a global metropolis rests not only on oil wealth, but also on its role as an air travel hub. Positioned midway between Europe, Asia, and Africa, it became a perfect stopover for international flights. Its luxurious airports and airlines turned geography into opportunity. And today, Dubai is as famous for its connectivity as for its skyscrapers. Cute trade routes influence not just the economy, but culture. Cities on major corridors often become melting pots of languages, cuisines, and traditions. In Casablanca, you can taste Moroccan spices alongside French pastries, a reflection of its colonial past and its role as a coastal trading hub. In Hong Kong, East and West converge in neon-lit streets, where dim sum restaurants neighbor British-style tea shops. Even inland, trade shapes growth. Chicago rose because of its location at the junction of railroads and waterways connecting the Great Lakes to the Mississippi River. It became a center for shipping grain, meat, and manufactured goods, and from that industrial base grew the modern city we see today. Similarly, Atlanta began as a railroad terminus, and its role as a transportation hub remains central to its identity. Trade routes also create vulnerabilities. Cities that depend too heavily on a single path or resource may falter if those routes shift. Once thriving towns along the old caravan routes of Central Asia declined when maritime trade routes overtook them in importance. Likewise, cities that depended on ports silted up by shifting rivers or neglected rail lines often lost their prominence. Geography giveth, and geography can taketh away. As we drift through these stories, it becomes clear that trade routes, whether over sand, sea, rail, or sky, form the arteries of urban life. They bring not only goods, but wealth, diversity, and ideas. Without them, many of the world's greatest cities would never have been more than small towns. And yet, as cities grow from trade, they must also master another challenge: defending themselves. Geography not only opens doors, but also exposes vulnerabilities. So next, let us explore the role of defense and security, the fortresses, walls, and natural barriers that once determined where people felt safe enough to settle and call a place home. As trade routes bring prosperity, they also bring risk. With wealth comes the danger of invasion, piracy, or conquest. This is why defense has always been another powerful force shaping the geography of cities. For much of history, people chose settlement sites, not only for access to resources or commerce, but for the ability to protect themselves. Think of Athens. The city rose upon a rocky hill called the Acropolis, where temples and fortresses looked out across the surrounding plain and toward the sea. The elevated ground provided not only a spiritual center, but also a natural fortress. In times of war, Athenians could retreat to its walls and command a defensive advantage over any attackers approaching from below. Geography granted Athens both inspiration and security. Rome, too, offers a lesson in defensive geography. The Eternal City was built among 7 hills, with the Tiber River winding nearby. This combination of elevation and water made it easier to defend, while still providing trade access. The hills offered natural watchtowers, while the river linked Rome to the Mediterranean. Over time, the city expanded far beyond its early fortifications, but its origin as a defensible settlement was crucial to its survival and dominance. In East Asia, Xi'an in China became a major capital of several dynasties, in part because of its position within fertile river valleys, but also because of its defensive walls. Even today, Sichuan is one of the few cities in the world where ancient walls still stand. Massive stone structures that once protected it from nomadic invasions across the steppe. Within those walls, emperors built palaces, scholars compiled knowledge, and traders rested on their way along the Silk Road. Jerusalem is another city shaped by defense. Settled on a plateau in the Judean hills, it has been surrounded by walls for millennia. Its geography made it easier to fortify, and its religious and cultural significance made it worth defending time and again. Every era left its own walls, gates, and fortresses. From the stones of King David's time to the Ottoman walls that still encircle the old city today. But not all defenses relied on stone walls. Some cities used nature itself. Carcassonne in France, for instance, is famous for its medieval citadel. But many cities depended on rivers, cliffs, and even swamps to ward off attackers. Venice, with its watery labyrinth of canals, was nearly impregnable to medieval armies. Boats might reach its lagoon, but the shallow waters and twisting channels protected the city from siege in ways a wall never could. Similarly, Edinburgh in Scotland rose beneath a volcanic crag called Castle Rock. The fortress built atop it dominates the skyline, a reminder of how natural defenses encourage settlement in precarious yet strategic locations. From such a vantage point, residents could see approaching enemies long before they arrived. In Asia, Japanese castles were often built on mountainsides or surrounded by moats, ensuring that geography worked hand in hand with architecture. Cities like Osaka and Himeji grew around these fortresses, their layouts shaped by spiraling roads and waterways designed to confuse invaders and protect residents. Fortifications not only defended cities, but shaped their growth. The medieval walls of Paris, for instance, determined where neighborhoods expanded. And when populations grew beyond them, new walls were built further out. Each expansion left a mark on the city's layout. Even today, Paris's ring roads echo the path of its vanished fortifications. Yet, as weapons advanced, the usefulness of walls diminished. Cannons and gunpowder changed warfare, making even the thickest stone fortresses vulnerable. Some walled cities, like Beijing, adapted by reinforcing their walls, while others, like London, shifted toward new forms of defense naval power, for example, rather than masonry. The Thames and its ports became London's shield, as much as its source of wealth. In the modern world, cities no longer rely on walls, but on political and technological defenses. Capitals, like Washington, D.C., or Moscow, are protected by security zones and air defenses rather than stone battlements. Yet, the principle remains the same. Where people feel safe, they build and flourish. Geography still matters even in this modern sense of security. Natural borders, mountains, rivers, oceans continue to shield cities. Tokyo lies vulnerable to earthquakes, but relatively safe from large-scale invasion because of Japan's island geography. Geneva sits surrounded by the Alps, giving it both beauty and a buffer. Defense, then, is not only about war. It is also about resilience, how cities survive threats from both humans and nature. And resilience is often tied to water, a resource both vital and dangerous. Our next journey will follow the flow of rivers, deltas, and coasts, to see how access to water and the risks of floods have guided where cities rise and how they endure. If trade and defense explain much about where cities grow, then rivers tell an even deeper story. Water is the lifeblood of civilization. Wherever you find great rivers, you almost always find great cities. They provide drinking water, fertile soil, transportation, and a constant link between distant communities. A city by a river is not just a settlement, it is a hub that connects worlds. The Nile is perhaps the most famous example. The river's annual floods left behind nutrient-rich silt, making farming possible in a desert landscape. Cities like Thebes and Memphis rose where agriculture thrived, and later, Cairo would become a crossroads of trade between Africa, the Middle East, and the Mediterranean. Without the Nile, Egypt, as we know it, would never have existed. The same is true in Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates. The world's earliest cities, Uru and Babylon, grew here, nurtured by rivers that turned dry plains into fertile land. These rivers not only made agriculture possible, but also carried goods, people, and ideas between settlements. In this way, rivers were the first highways of humanity. In Europe, Paris grew upon the Seine. London developed along the Thames. Vienna rose beside the Danube. Each of these rivers is not only a geographical feature, but also a narrative thread, weaving culture and commerce together across centuries. The Seine brought wine and grain into Paris. The Thames carried wool and textiles to distant markets. The Yangtze River in China tells a similar story on a much larger scale. At over 6,000 kilometers long, it is the lifeline of southern China. Cities like Chongqing, Wuhan, and Shanghai owe their existence to it. The river allows goods from inland provinces to reach the coast, and today its basin is home to hundreds of millions of people. Even now, as high-speed trains and airplanes move people across the nation, the Yangtze remains vital for shipping goods and sustaining agriculture. Waterways do more than feed agriculture and trade. They shape culture. The Ganges in India is both a river and a goddess, revered in Hinduism as sacred. Cities like Varanasi exist because of the river's spiritual power, as much as its agricultural bounty. Pilgrims arrive by the millions, turning the Ganges into both a spiritual artery and an economic one. The Mississippi in North America is another mighty river shaping civilization. Its vast basin allowed the growth of cities like St. Louis, Memphis, and New Orleans. For centuries, it has carried grain, cotton, and oil. Mark Twain once wrote that the river was the body of the nation, and in many ways still is a corridor linking north to south, past to future. Smaller rivers, too, hold immense importance. Florence flourished along the Arno. Prague rose by the Vltava. Cairo sits on the Nile Delta, while Amsterdam rests on countless canals. Even when a river seems modest, its role in urban history is monumental. Rivers also bring challenges. Flooding is one of the oldest threats cities face. The Indus Valley cities built elaborate drainage and flood systems thousands of years ago. In modern times, levees, dikes, and dams attempt to tame rivers like the Mississippi or Yangtze, though sometimes at great cost. The Three Gorges Dam in China, for instance, is a technological marvel, but also displaced millions of people when its reservoir swallowed villages and towns. The geography of rivers is never static. They shift courses, erode banks, and reshape deltas. Cities must adapt or perish. New Orleans is sinking as the Mississippi shifts its flow. Venice battles rising waters in its lagoons. Dhaka in Bangladesh faces flooding year after year as rivers swell with monsoon rains. Living by water offers prosperity, but also risk. And yet, even with these dangers, humanity has never abandoned rivers. Their pull is too strong. Modern cities still cluster around them. From Bangkok on the Chao Phraya to Buenos Aires on the De La Plata, container ships, barges, and ferries still carry goods along waterways, just as dugout canoes did thousands of years ago. But rivers are not the only water features that shape cities. Coastlines, bays, and deltas are equally powerful in determining where people settle. Ports become centers of wealth. Harbors become gates to the wider world. And in our next chapter, we'll drift along the shorelines of history, where cities rise and fall with the tides. If rivers are the inland highways of humanity, then coastlines are its open doors. They connect continents, invite exploration, and draw trade like magnets. A good harbor can turn a fishing village into a metropolis, while a poor or shallow coastline may leave a settlement small and isolated. Ports and harbors are where land meets sea, and where cities often rise to global importance. Take New York City. Its natural harbor, carved by glaciers and fed by the Hudson River, made it one of the finest port locations in the world. For centuries, ships carrying immigrants, raw materials, and manufactured goods docked here. The Statue of Liberty itself was a beacon for millions arriving by sea, cementing the city's identity as a gateway to opportunity. Without its harbor, New York may never have become the bustling financial and cultural capital it is today. Across the Atlantic, London grew not just because of the Thames, but because of its access to the North Sea. Its port allowed the British Empire to project power across the globe. The docks of London were once the busiest in the world, handling goods from India, the America, and Africa. Even now, London thrives as a global hub of finance and trade, a legacy of its maritime past. In Asia, coastal cities tell equally rich stories. Hong Kong rose because of its deep natural harbor, sheltered from typhoons and open to international trade routes. Singapore, though tiny in land area, became one of the world's busiest ports, sitting at the strategic crossroads between the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea. Geography blessed these cities with access to maritime highways, and human ingenuity turned them into global powerhouses. Tokyo, too, began as a fishing village on Edo Bay. Its location offered protection and trade access, allowing it to grow into the world's most populous metropolis. Shanghai developed at the mouth of the Yangtze River, perfectly positioned between river trade and oceanic shipping lanes, handling more containers than any other city on Earth. But harbors do more than feed economies. They shape culture and identity. Venice is a city born from the sea, built upon islands in a lagoon. Its canals were once its streets, carrying merchants from Byzantium, spices from the East, and art from the Renaissance. Lisbon in Portugal looks westward, across the Atlantic, its explorers once sailing out to chart new worlds. Rio de Janeiro grew around Guanabara Bay, its harbor ringed by dramatic mountains and blessed with natural beauty. Not all coastlines are generous, however. Some are jagged, storm-prone, or shallow, limiting their potential. Yet, human creativity has often overcome these challenges. Rotterdam, in the Netherlands, engineered one of the most advanced port systems in the world, using dikes, dredging, and technology to transform its geography. Dubai built artificial harbors and even artificial islands to attract trade and tourism. Where nature withholds, engineering often intervenes. Ports also attract migration. Coastal cities become melting pots of languages, cuisines, and traditions. From Alexandria in Egypt to Marseille in France, from Boston to Mumbai, the sea has brought people together. These maritime crossroads have often been centers of tolerance, innovation, and creativity, though they have also been arenas of conquest and colonization. The ocean itself influences city life. Sea breezes moderate temperatures, fisheries feed populations, and beaches become centers of leisure and tourism. Luxury travel flourishes in coastal cities, from the French Riviera to Miami Beach. Cruise ships dock in ports that once welcomed caravels, bringing with them tourists instead of traders. The economy may change, but the geography remains constant. Of course, living by the sea brings risks, just as rivers do. Storm surges, hurricanes, and tsunamis threaten coastal cities every year. Rising sea levels, caused by climate change, now endanger some of the very ports that made civilizations thrive. Cities like Jakarta, Miami, and Dhaka face uncertain futures as waters creep higher. Engineers scramble to build seawalls, but the challenge is immense. Still, humanity rarely retreats from the shore. The allure of the coast is too strong. Even as some areas face flooding, new coastal cities rise in other regions. The rhythm of tides continues to call us to the edge of land, where opportunity and danger meet. In the next part, we'll move inland again, exploring how mountains shape cities not just as barriers, but as protectors, providers, and even sacred sites. Mountains, rising like stone walls across landscapes, have always been both barriers and blessings. For cities, they serve as guardians, climate regulators, sources of resources, and sometimes even spiritual anchors. The presence of mountains can determine whether a settlement thrives or struggles, whether it becomes a fortress of power or remains isolated in stillness. Consider Mexico City, which lies within a high-altitude basin encircled by mountains and volcanoes. This geography gave the Aztec capital of natural defenses while also creating fertile soils for crops. Yet, the mountains also trapped air, a challenge modern Mexico City still faces with pollution. Geography provided both opportunity and burden, reminding us that cities grow in delicate balance with their environment. Kathmandu, in Nepal, rests in a similar bowl-shaped valley, surrounded by the towering Himalayas. While the mountains shield the city and provide rivers fed by glaciers, they also isolate it from the wider world. Trade and travel have always required difficult passes, but this very isolation allowed Kathmandu to develop its own vibrant blend of Hindu and Buddhist culture. Its temples and shrines rising against snow-capped backdrops. In Europe, mountain cities often flourished because they were defensible. Innsbruck, in Austria, grew at a key alpine crossing point, where merchants and armies could pass through valleys. The Swiss cities of Zurich and Geneva benefited from mountain protection, while thriving on trade routes that threaded through narrow passes. Mountains offered both safety and commerce. Sometimes mountains create dramatic backdrops that define a city's identity. Think of Cape Town in South Africa, where Table Mountain looms over the skyline, or Rio de Janeiro, where granite peaks rise dramatically around its bays, creating one of the world's most iconic cityscapes. These mountains are more than scenery. They shape weather, limit expansion, and give cultural identity to the places below. Mountains also dictate water supplies. Los Angeles depends on mountain snowmelt carried through aqueducts. In the Andes, cities like La Paz and Quito survive thanks to glacial rivers. Without mountains, these cities could not exist. Mountains act as natural reservoirs, catching snowfall in winter and releasing water slowly during summer. There's also the matter of climate. High-altitude cities, such as in Colombia, enjoy cooler temperatures compared to lowland tropics. This makes them comfortable places to live despite being near the equator. Historically, colonial powers often built cities in the mountains for health reasons, escaping the heat and disease of coastal lowlands. The geography shaped demographics and cultural development. Spirituality, too, thrives where mountains dominate. Cities near sacred peaks often grow into pilgrimage centers. Lhasa in Tibet developed in the shadow of the Himalayas, blending politics with religion. Cusco, the Incan capital, was framed by Andean peaks, believed to be home to powerful spirits. Even modern Tokyo rests within sight of Mount Fuji, which remains a cultural symbol as well as a geographic landmark. But mountains are not always friendly. Landslides, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions can devastate mountain cities. Naples, in Italy, lives under the looming shadow of Mount Vesuvius, whose eruption buried Pompeii nearly 2 millennia ago. Yet people remain drawn by the fertile soils and Mediterranean beauty. humanity persists, even in danger. Mountains can also limit growth. Urban expansion in places like Hong Kong, or is squeezed between steep slopes, forcing creative architecture and transport solutions. In Hong Kong, skyscrapers climb hillsides. In cable cars connect hillside neighborhoods to the city center. Geography forces innovation. For luxury travel and tourism, mountain cities hold irresistible charm. Inns nestled among alpine peaks attract skiers, hikers, and sightseers. Kyoto, surrounded by mountains, draws millions with its temples and seasonal beauty. Mountain landscapes, paired with urban comforts, create experiences that blend nature with culture, valuable in both economy and identity. As we reflect on mountains and their role in shaping cities, it becomes clear that no urban story is simple. The terrain itself dictates opportunities and obstacles, pushing humanity to adapt, innovate, and sometimes even worship the land that surrounds them. In the next part, we will look at deserts and how some of the world's greatest cities rose in landscapes that seem most hostile to life where water is scarce. Yet culture flourishes. Deserts appear, at first glance, to be lifeless, barren, inhospitable. Yet, across history, some of the most influential cities have grown from these very arid landscapes. Their existence often feels like a miracle humanity, creating oases of life and trade amid seas of sand. Take Cairo, the capital of Egypt, standing on the edge of the Sahara. Its location is no accident. The Nile River cuts through the desert, offering fertile banks for agriculture and a water supply for millions. Without this river, Cairo would not exist. Here, geography demonstrates its power. A single river sustains one of the world's largest cities in an otherwise hostile desert. Farther east, Baghdad rose along the Tigris River, another desert city fueled by water's presence. Though the desert surrounds it, the city flourished as a cultural and intellectual hub of the Islamic Golden Age. Rivers gave not only life, but also trade routes, allowing knowledge and goods to flow across dry expanses. In more recent centuries, desert cities like Dubai and Abu Dhabi have risen on trade and later oil wealth. Their growth demonstrates a modern twist: technology and industry overcoming geographic limits. Air conditioning, desalination plants, and luxury infrastructure allow millions to thrive in a place where natural resources would never have supported such scale. Here, the economy bends geography into new forms. Las Vegas in Nevada is another modern desert city, built not on oil, but entertainment and tourism. Its lights blaze across the Mojave, powered by the Hoover Dam and the Colorado River. In many ways, Las Vegas represents a kind of mirage made permanent, an oasis sustained by technology and energy rather than natural springs. Deserts force cities to innovate with water. Ancient Petra, carved into the rose-colored cliffs of Jordan, survived through elaborate cisterns and channels that captured rainfall. Marrakesh in Morocco relied on underground water channels known as ketras, engineering feats that allowed lush gardens to bloom in dry surroundings. These examples remind us that survival in deserts requires ingenuity as much as courage. Desert climates also shape urban culture. Houses in cities like Yazd in Iran were designed with wind towers. Structures that captured breezes and cooled interiors long before electricity. Thick walls, narrow streets, and courtyards offered shade, making daily life bearable. The architecture itself became a response to geography. Economically, deserts can create hubs of luxury and exclusivity. The Persian Gulf cities now boast luxury hotels, global tourism, and glittering skyscrapers. Their very existence in the desert enhances their allure. Places of extravagance rising from sand. Symbols of wealth defying nature's scarcity. Tourism thrives on this paradox. Yet, desert cities also face challenges. Climate change threatens water supplies. Growing populations put pressure on fragile ecosystems. Cairo struggles with water management as the Nile is strained. Las Vegas must ration and recycle water as drought reduces. The Colorado River, the very geography that enabled these cities, is also their greatest vulnerability. But deserts are not only about scarcity. They offer beauty and identity. The Sahara frames the culture of North Africa. The Arabian Desert defines much of the Middle East's traditions. In these settings, cities become cultural crossroads where caravans once traveled, where markets bustled with spices, textiles, and ideas. Geography carved paths for history to flow. One of the most striking desert cities is Timbuktu in Mali. Once legendary as a wealthy center of trade and learning, it sat at the edge of the Sahara, where camel caravans met the Niger River. Its mosques and manuscripts tell of a time when geography made it a gateway between desert and savanna. As we consider desert cities, we see extremes. Cairo and Baghdad rooted in rivers, Las Vegas and Dubai thriving on technology, Petra and Timbuktu immortalized in history. All are proof that human civilization finds ways to flourish even in landscapes that seem to resist life itself. In the next part, we will leave the deserts and move toward the seas again. This time, looking at island cities, unique urban spaces shaped by isolation, water, and their role as bridges in global trade. Island cities possess a charm unlike any other. Surrounded by water, they often serve as crossroads of trade, culture, and migration. Geography grants them both isolation and connection. Isolation that preserves unique traditions, and connection that makes them hubs of global exchange. Consider Singapore. Though it is a small island city-state, its location at the crossroads of the Strait of Malacca has made it one of the busiest ports in the world. Geography, once again, explains its success. Ships traveling between the Indian and Pacific Oceans pass its shores, bringing commerce, cultures, and opportunities. Today, Singapore ranks among the richest cities globally, blending finance, tourism, and cutting-edge technology in one island jewel. Another island city, Hong Kong, lies along the Pearl River Delta in southern China. Its harbor, deep and naturally sheltered, has long attracted trade. Under British colonial rule, it transformed into a vital port of global commerce. Today, it remains an international hub where luxury shopping, financial power, and tourism converge. Here, the sea became both protector and path. In Europe, Venice is perhaps the most iconic of island cities. Built upon lagoons, with canals instead of streets, it thrived during the Middle Ages as a maritime republic. Its power rested on controlling trade between East and West, and its wealth flowed from the Mediterranean and beyond. Though now more famous for its beauty and tourism, Venice still reminds us of a time when geography shaped empires. Island cities often carry vulnerability, too. Rising seas threaten places like Male, the capital of the Maldives, perched only a few feet above sea level. Its geography leaves it exposed to climate change. Building seawalls and seeking sustainable solutions to preserve their home. Tokyo, though often thought of as a mainland city, sits upon multiple islands in its vast bay. Its connection to the Pacific has fueled its rise as one of the world's greatest megacities. Fishing, shipping, and international trade were its lifeblood long before it became a capital of technology, finance, and culture. Island cities also nurture unique cultural identities. Take Havana, Cuba, whose streets reflect centuries of Spanish colonial influence, African heritage, and Caribbean rhythm. Its position in the Caribbean Sea gave it global importance for trade and empire. And today, it thrives as a symbol of resilience and culture. Another striking example is Zanzibar City in Tanzania, located on the island of Unguja. For centuries, it was a center of spice trade and cultural fusion, where Arab, Indian, and African influences blended. Its stone town is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, preserving this rich legacy of maritime geography. Economically, island cities often serve as bridges between continents. Istanbul, though not a true island, spans two continents and functions in much the same way, geographic and cultural link. Similarly, cities like Manila in the Philippines or Jakarta in Indonesia stand as gateways across vast archipelagos, connecting thousands of islands into single nations. Tourism thrives in island cities. Honolulu, Hawaii, attracts millions each year with its beaches, volcanic landscapes, and Pacific culture. The very isolation that once made it remote now makes it exotic and luxurious. Geography gives these places their magnetism. Oceans both separate them and make them alluring. Even ancient island cities shaped history. Carthage, near modern-day Tunis, once stood as a powerful maritime city-state. Though not far offshore, it used its coastal island setting as protection and strength, becoming a rival to Rome before its fall. Geography, again, as destiny. Yet, isolation also creates challenges. Supplying resources like food and fresh water has always been a test for island cities. Desalination plants, imports, and technological innovation now support millions who live in places that once could only sustain a few thousand. Island cities are more than just settlements. They are symbols of resilience and connection. They show how people can turn geographic limitations into advantages, turning seas into bridges rather than barriers. In the next part, we will shift from islands to mountains, exploring how cities perched among peaks and valleys have thrived despite their rugged, often unforgiving environments. High in the mountains, where oxygen thins and landscapes rise in dramatic folds, cities find unlikely homes. These mountain cities are striking examples of human resilience, ingenuity, and adaptation. Geography, again, plays its quiet but powerful role, shaping both challenge and opportunity. One of the most famous high-altitude cities is La Paz, Bolivia. nestled in the Andes at nearly 3,600 meters above sea level. It is the highest administrative capital in the world. Here, geography defines daily life. The air is thinner, which makes physical exertion more difficult. Yet the city thrives with millions of residents who have adapted across generations to the unique demands of altitude. The surrounding mountains offer not only breathtaking beauty, but also resources such as minerals, which have long driven the economy. Farther north, in the Andes, lies Quito, Ecuador. Built on the slopes of a volcanic valley at about 2,850 meters. Quito's history stretches back to pre-Columbian civilizations, later reshaped under Spanish colonial influence. Its geography places it near the equator, giving it a mild climate year-round, despite its elevation. Quito's Old Town is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, where cobblestone streets, colonial churches, and the towering Andes come together in a singular atmosphere. Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal, lies in a valley surrounded by the Himalayan foothills. It has long been a crossroads of trade routes between India and Tibet, with geography positioning it as a cultural and spiritual hub. From here, climbers launch expeditions to the highest peaks on Earth, including Mount Everest. Tourism, trekking, and mountaineering sustain much of its modern economy. In Europe, Innsbruck, Austria, offers another fascinating example. Tucked into the Alps, it flourished as a medieval trading hub, thanks to mountain passes that linked Italy to northern Europe. Today, it balances history with modernity, famous for winter sports and luxury alpine tourism. Its geography not only provides economic opportunity, but also defines its identity. Mountain cities are often blessed with natural defenses. Historically, their locations made them more secure from invaders. For example, Cusco, in Peru, served as the heart of the Inca Empire. Surrounded by high ridges, it was easier to defend and became a powerful center of governance and culture. Even today, its geography draws millions of visitors to nearby Machu Picchu, a site hidden in the Andes that tells stories of engineering brilliance in rugged terrain. But challenges abound in mountain settings. Transport is more difficult. Roads, railways, and airports must navigate steep slopes and unpredictable weather. In places like Thimphu, Bhutan, geography dictates slower, smaller-scale development. Yet these challenges also preserve culture, keeping Bhutan cities distinct from the globalized sameness seen elsewhere. Mexico City, while not as high as La Paz, also sits at significant altitude, around 2,200 meters, in a basin surrounded by mountains and volcanoes. Its setting has brought both blessings and difficulties. The fertile soils from ancient volcanic activity allowed early civilizations like the Aztecs to thrive. But today, its geography contributes to pollution and subsidence problems, as the city continues to sink due to its foundation on an ancient lake bed. Lhasa, Tibet, sometimes called the roof of the world, stands as a cultural and spiritual beacon at over 3,600 meters. Its monasteries and palaces highlight a geography that fosters both isolation and sanctity. The Potala Palace, rising above the city, seems to blend into the mountain itself. Perfect example of human construction working in harmony with geography. Mountain cities also bring unique economies. Many depend on tourism, offering winter sports, hiking, and luxury retreats. Others thrive on mining, extracting minerals and precious metals from the depths of their rocky surroundings. Yet others, like Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, leverage their elevation for comfortable climates that support political and economic growth. Addis, at around 2,300 meters, serves as the diplomatic capital of Africa, hosting the African Union headquarters. Life at high altitude also influences culture and health. Generations living at these elevations often develop physiological adaptations, including greater lung capacity. Traditions, too, reflect geography. Rituals tied to mountains, gods associated with peaks, and foods adapted to limited agriculture. In the Andes, potatoes and quinoa became staple crops because they could grow in high, cold valleys. Yet, despite the hardships, mountain cities offer some of the most stunning visuals on Earth. Imagine the sun rising over the snow-capped Himalayas, with a city awakening in the valley below. Geography creates not only challenges, but also beauty. And it's this beauty that continues to attract travelers seeking awe, adventure, or peace. In the next part, we will turn to coastal megacities, exploring how places built beside oceans grow into sprawling giants of population, economy, and influence. When we shift our gaze from mountains to coasts, the scale of human settlement becomes even more striking. Coastal megacities are among the most dynamic, crowded, and globally influential places on Earth. They illustrate how proximity to oceans has always meant prosperity, connection, and opportunity, yet also risk. Take Tokyo, Japan. With over 37 million people in its metropolitan area, it is the largest urban agglomeration on the planet. Its location on Tokyo Bay has long facilitated trade, fishing, and maritime industries. Today, its geography ties it into global finance, advanced technology, and luxury consumer markets. Yet the same location exposes Tokyo to natural hazards, earthquakes, tsunamis, and typhoons, reminding us of the fragile balance between prosperity and geography's power. Shanghai, China, offers another powerful example. Built on the Yangtze River Delta, it grew from a modest fishing settlement into a global financial hub. Geography blessed it with river access, fertile plains, and a broad coastline that connected it to international trade. Today, skyline, dominated by towers like the Shanghai Tower, symbolizes both economic ambition and the power of coastal positioning. Moving to South America, São Paulo may not sit directly on the coast, but its sister port city, Santos, links it to global markets. Coastal Brazil, with Rio de Janeiro as another shining example, shows how geography creates dual economized ports channel trade, while inland cities expand industry and finance. The beaches, mountains, and natural beauty of Rio also sustain a thriving luxury tourism industry, making geography both an economic and cultural engine. New York City stands as a classic case of coastal geography shaping destiny. Its deep natural harbor, protected by Long Island, made it a perfect hub for shipping and immigration. Ellis Island and the Statue of Liberty remind us how millions entered through its ports, shaping the cultural diversity that defines the city today. New York's role as a financial capital continues to rest on its geography. City, perfectly poised between the American heartland and Europe across the Atlantic. In Africa, Lagos, Nigeria, is a rapidly growing coastal megacity. Its geography makes it both vital and vulnerable. Located on lagoons and near the Gulf of Guinea, Lagos is Nigeria's economic powerhouse, home to the busiest port in West Africa. Its growth is astonishing, with millions migrating from inland regions for opportunities tied to trade, finance, and culture. But its low-lying geography also exposes it to flooding, coastal erosion, and the effects of climate change. Cairo, while more riverine than coastal, connects to the Mediterranean through the Nile Delta. Alexandria, its coastal counterpart, carries centuries of history as a center of learning and maritime trade. The Nile's journey ends in a delta that has sustained Egyptian civilization for millennia, with Cairo and Alexandria together anchoring the region's economy and culture. Istanbul is perhaps one of the most fascinating coastal megacities in the world. Straddling the Bosporus Strait, it sits on two continents, Europe and Asia. Geography here doesn't just shape trade routes, it creates identity. The city has been the capital of empires Roman, Byzantine, Ottoman, because of its unmatched control over one of the busiest waterways on Earth. Today, container ships and oil tankers glide past ancient palaces, illustrating how geography threads past and present together. Another intriguing coastal giant is Dhaka, Bangladesh, Ka. Though located slightly inland along rivers, its proximity to the Bay of Bengal gives it both economic importance and geographic vulnerability. The deltaic landscape around Dhaka is fertile,